The world is facing unprecedented security threats, from evolving geopolitical tensions to cyber warfare. Traditional alliances are being tested, leaving many wondering what is next. So in today's video, we will be discovering how a potential Canzuk defense doctrine could offer a powerful coordinated solution. And this doesn't just have to be a theory. If we can implement it, it could be a strategic pathway to bolster defense and deter aggression on a global scale, not only benefiting Canzuk nations themselves, but serving as a new pillar for global security. First, a very brief rundown on what Canzuk is. If you're new to the concept or have not watched any of my videos before, I've done a good few on different Canzuk concepts now, but it is a proposed alliance between Canada, Australia, New Zealand and the United Kingdom, covering things like free trade, freedom of movement, defence policy, foreign relations cooperation, and deeper ties overall, trying to create this new bloc that can stand as basically a new superpower in the international system. Now, a collective Canzuk defense doctrine, I believe, should function similar to NATO's Article 5. So if one member is attacked, then the others come to its defense. And that also, of course, acts as a deterrence if it is actually enforced and supported publicly by the four nations. Of course, we've seen over in the United States how the current president has undermined Article 5 and thus undermines its very point of deterrence. But I believe that Canzuk nations are so closely aligned that this would never come about. This situation would never happen with Canzuk. On the base level, geographically, Canzuk offers many strategic advantages. The Canzuk nations themselves are dispersed, so this is a dispersal geographic advantage. It offers strategic depth and resilience against any concentrated attacks. The only downside, of course, is the logistics of getting things between these four countries that are spread across the world. They also have shared democratic values and historical ties, providing a strong foundation for trust and cooperation, and also cooperate closely within existing agreements as well. This is something I've gone over many times in the past, but they are all in agreements such as NATO, Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, G7, G20, etc., etc. For this video, the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance is particularly relevant. Canzuk nations also have incredible interoperability. They are able to cooperate very closely and complement each other's military strengths and expertise. The UK's naval power to special operations with all the countries, and Canada's Arctic power, for example, their Arctic expertise is something that could come in very useful indeed. They also have existing intelligence sharing and joint training exercises that, in my opinion, highlights this foundation of interoperability that would allow them to explore joint procurement of advanced defense systems and military equipment to leverage economies of scale. There is also, due to this level of interoperability, huge potential for a unified rapid reaction force, whether that be military or indeed for humanitarian aid and crisis relief. This is something that Canzuk could be very strong on, the ability to deploy globally due to their geographic positioning with that rapid reaction force. One thing that I think a Canzuk defense doctrine could benefit from is a more regular set of joint training exercises. We see already that New Zealand, Australia and Canada have joined in with the UK carrier strike groups operations many times in the past, and indeed in their current operations in the Pacific. But I think particular exercises set up to increase the interoperability and effectiveness of Canzuk militaries, gelling them together and pooling their resources as well, I think this would only be a good thing. Something like joint anti-piracy operations in strategic shipping lanes could also prove a massive opportunity for Canzuk, given their level of global logistical advantage and coordination. Such operations would allow them to put their interoperability training into action and train in the real world, while also demonstrating to other powers the effectiveness of Canzuk military forces. Anti-piracy operations would also be an effective way to do this, because the nations have strategic similarities. 3 out of the 4 are island nations, and the 4th, Canada, has the longest coastline of any nation, so naturally they place a premium on naval power, all of them having considerable dependence on trade, vulnerability to blockades, and an interest in open sea lines and free trade. And a free trade agreement, of course, between the Canzuk nations is something we've talked about before, so anti-piracy operations and protecting these shipping lanes is a win-win for Canzuk. Furthermore, the enormous distances in Australia and Canada, as well as their geographic dispersion of Canzuk generally, places a premium on air power and civilian air protection. So naval and air power are things that I think Canzuk should focus on in any defence doctrine, especially naval power and common procurement of military equipment, such as fighter procurement, frigate procurement, something like that. I know Canada is set to build a whole new fleet of Canadian River-class destroyers, which are based on the British Type 26 frigate. So that is a current example of how we are cooperating in naval power. And I think starting small but thinking big is a really good way to do this, starting with the small scale necessary equipment, the logistics and the common training, as I've already mentioned. Take what already exists and expand it before going deeper. And another way that this could be done is army recruitment. As well as its own citizens, the UK will accept Commonwealth and Irish citizens to join its military. New Zealand accepts UK, Australian, Canadian or American citizens. Australia accepts New Zealand citizens only, whereas Canada will only take its own. So maybe a Canzuk agreement could expand on this and standardise it, add some boosters, for example, permitting cross-national active duty, 4 years in the British Army, 2 years in Australia, for example, or 2 years in Canada. Further to that, allowing duty with any of the 4 nations to count towards one country's pension. So if you're a British citizen but you've served 4 years in Canada, that would count towards your UK military pension. Something like that, kind of expand the system we already have, would be a good thing. Nuclear will also, of course, feature in any Canzuk defence doctrine, the UK being the only of the 4 Canzuk nations to actually possess nuclear weapons. Around 250 warheads, I believe. The position of New Zealand is incredibly anti-nuclear, so I believe that they would not necessarily take part in this. However, Canada and Australia, while not nuclear powers, hold incredibly vast uranium reserves, around a third of the entire world's total reserves of uranium, giving them an inherent interest in nuclear power and nuclear weapons. In the end, of course, this is a very touchy subject, and with New Zealand being so anti it might be something that Canzuk does not necessarily look too deep into for fear of creating tensions within the Canzuk nations. But it is something that I thought I should mention in any defence doctrine, because nuclear deterrence is a huge part of any general deterrence as well. The setbacks to any unified or standardised Canzuk defence doctrine is to overcome individual national defence priorities and, of course, bureaucratic hurdles. The financial commitment required and burden sharing across member states is something that would also have to be considered, as well as navigating complex relationships with existing alliances and avoiding perceptions of exclusivity. So those are a few things I do think we'd be able to iron out the differences here and the burden sharing and things like this, because we in the end are all equal member states in Canzuk. There is no one commanding state in Canzuk. It is all on an equal basis. And I do think a cohesive Canzuk defence posture could enhance deterrence and stability in key regions to face rising global challenges, particularly in the Indo-Pacific and, of course, Russia, creating a strong bloc bridging traditional alliances like NATO with regional security. And in my opinion, it is time for deeper military integration and a formalised defence doctrine now with Canzuk. This would only strengthen our nations and serve as a new pillar of global security. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please drop a like and subscribe. You can also buy me a coffee or join the channel as a member using the links in the description down below. But again, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.